All right, so we'll say good morning. Let's begin. A lot to do today. Today's daf is daf Dalid 4. We are picking up on Gimel Amud Beis 3b, and I will say we are picking up on the second wide line. Tan Rabbanan. So remember again, our shir is dedicated to Ili Nishmas Eliezer ben Kolonimos. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, Hashem will have a complete and enduring aliyah. Well, so let's begin. Tan Rabbanan. Dinei Mamanas B'Shlosha. We'll say, so today we have exceptional Gemara. So Dinei Mamanas B'Shlosha. So the halacha is that you have to adjudicate, right? Dinei Mamanas, monetary law, with a basin of 3 people. Rebbe Omer Bechamisha. Rebbe says, no, you need a basin of 5. Why 5? Kidei sheyigmor hadin b'shlosha. We'll say, this is amazing. Rebbe says, you need 5 in order that you could reach a verdict through at least 3 judges. I don't understand. If you have a basin of 3, why can't you reach a verdict with 2? This is what it means to say. So what Rebbe means to say is the following. I will say that we need a verdict. We need a verdict ultimately again to be conveyed by 3, meaning a verdict requires a majority of at least 3. Therefore, we'll say we see that according to Rebbe, when we learn out the concept of 3 witnesses, that must mean what? 3 judges. 3 judges is a din in the Gemar din, in the final verdict. So the Gemara says Megadef or Rabbi Avo. Rabbi Avo will say now Megadef usually is a very strong word. Megadef means actually biblically means to curse. Here over here it more means like Rabbi Avo was like blown away by this. He didn't understand this statement. Alma kasavar tzlasa kiksiv b'gemar din ksivi. So Rabbi Avo says, I don't understand, Rebbe. So you're telling me now that when the Torah discusses the idea of 3 judges, that 3 judges is not a concept in the adjudication of a case, but rather it's a concept in the resolution of a case. Then when the Torah speaks about 3 judges, as we spoke about yesterday, we learned the source for needing 3 dayanim. That 3 dayanim means that in the verdict you need 3 dayanim. Now also remember, if you need 3 dayanim in the verdict, that means you need a basin of at least how many? Of at least 5. So Rabbi Avo says, well, if that's the case, you've just fundamentally upended the entire judicial system. How so? So Gemara says, if that's the case, if that's the case, then the Sanhedrin Agad should need 141 judges in order that what? So that you could reach a majority decision with 71. In other words, what Rabbi Avo is saying is like this. So if you're telling me that when we say you need 3 judges, that means a majority of 3 judges. That means you need a basin of 5. That means every single time the Mishnah told me about a certain number of dayanim for a Beis Din, I now understand that number to mean what? That's the number of judges you need on the court as a majority. So when you told me that a Sanhedrin is 71, are you telling me then that what? That a Sanhedrin requires a majority of 71, which means that by definition, the Sanhedrin must have at least 141 members. The Sanhedrin HaKatan should require at least 45. In order that you could have a 23-person majority. So obviously, that's not possible, right? That's obviously not possible. The Torah can't be telling me that I have to have, or I should say, Chazal can't be telling me that I have to have batei din of this size, because at the end of the day, large governing bodies are unruly and unproductive. Ella, rather, what does the Gemara say? Asfali shivim ish. Rather, what does the Torah say? The Torah says like this. Kadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, gather for me 70 men. Gather me 70 men. Amar Rachman, the Mishas Asifa Shivim. Oh, we'll say, so what do we see from here? Asfali means collect for me. So you understand Mishas Asifa. What does Shas Asifa mean? The number 70 is related to the Asifa, to the gathering, which means the actual judicial process. It's not referring to the rendering of the verdict. Kadosh Baruch Hu is not saying to Moshe, you need 70 people for the verdict. Kadosh Baruch Hu is saying, Moshe, you need 70 people for the process. Therefore, again, v'shaftu ha'ida v'etzilu ha'ida. Remember we saw this in the Mishnah. We learn out the Sanhedrin HaKatan, which is 23, from the 2 mentions of Eida. Shaftu ha'ida, the Eida will judge, the Eida will save. Nami mishas shfitas ha'ida. So you see the Torah use the lotion of shfitas ha'ida, when the congregation judges. So you see from here that the Torah is giving me these numbers in relation to the actual judicial process, not to the verdict. Hachanami v'nikra balabayis ela elokim. So too, Over here, when it comes to a basin of 3, the pasuk says the Balabayis will approach, the Elohim will approach the judge, Mishas Kriva Shlosha. Ultimately, again, from the time that the litigants approach the judges, you require 3. So therefore, what we're saying over here is all of the numbers that we had for Batei Din were numbers for the actual judicial process, not numbers necessary for the verdict. So why does Rebbe hold what he holds? Remember, Rebbe said that for Dinei Mamanis you need a Beis Din of 5. So Rebbe, where do you get this from? Rebbe, Asher Yarshion Elokim Trey Ne'emar. So we'll say, listen, Trey. So Rebbe says like this. We'll say when it comes to monetary law, the Torah says, Asher Yarshion Elohim. He who the judges will find guilty. Now, both say Yarshiun Elohim is plural. The basic definition of plural is 2. So Ne'emar Elohim lamata, but Ne'emar Elohim lamala. It says Elohim twice. Ma lamata shnayim, af lamala shnayim. Just like Elohim in the first context means 2, Elohim in the second context means 2 as well. Ve'ein Beis Din shakol, and therefore Beis Din cannot go ahead and be equal. So you can't have a 4-person Beis Din. Mosifin aleim od echad harikan chamisha. You add on one more, and then you get 5. So we'll say, so Rebbe's really just dealing with the basic Zer Sakasav. Torah says the word Elohim twice. Minimum definition of Elohim is, or Yashin Elohim, is 2 judges. You have 2 and 2 is 4. You can't have a Beis Din Shal, can't have an even Beis Din. We add a 5th. Top of Dalid. So why don't the Rabbanon subscribe to this? The Rabbanon Yarshion Ksiv. They both say the Rabbanon hold, even though normally the word Yarshion could be understood in the plural, but it's written chaser. It's written without a vav. And because it's written without a vav, the Torah is teaching me that I'm not to darshan its plurality. So because I'm not to darshan its plurality, therefore again, you don't end up with 4 judges. Okay. So I'm going to be, so it seems to be, the machlokus over here between Rebbe and the Rabbanon is just in how you darshan psukim. Rebbe's darshaning Yarshin Elokim, right, which represents 4 judges. You can't have a Beis Din Shakal at a 5th. The Rabbanon say we don't darshan that Yarshin as in a plural sense because it's written chaser, it's written without the vav. So we'll say, listen to this. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, we'll say this is a great Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yossi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rebbe. V'Rabbi Yehuda ben Roatz, v'Beis Shammai, v'Rabbi Shimon, v'Rabbi Akiva. We'll say this is mamish like an all-star lineup. All of these great Rabbanim, kulhu svir lahu yesh aim lemikra. And we'll say now we're going to come to one of the most yesodistic machloksim in Shas. And we've actually seen this a number of times already. The machlokes of yesh aim lemikra or yesh aim lemasores. And we'll say sometimes in the Torah you could have a word that is read a certain way, but spelled a different way, written a different way. So the shaila is, when you have a difference in the word in the Torah between the way that it's spoken and the way that it's written, so which form ultimately obtains supremacy? And this is going to be important as we're going to see in just a little bit. So the Gemara suggests all of these Rabbanan that we just mentioned, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda ben Roatz, Beis Shammai, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Akiva, all hold Yesh Im Lemikra. Take a look at the top Rashi. Yesh Im Lemikra. Basar Kriya Azlinon. They both say we go after the way the word is spoken. Right? We go after literally the way the word is read. Yesh Im Lemikra means you go after the way that the word is vocalized and pronounced. So we'll say, now we're going to go through where we see each of these opinions. Rabbi Hada'am. So we'll say, Rabbi we just saw, because that's based on Yarshion. Even though Yarshion, Rabbi say, is written what? Without a vav, even though it's written without a vav, because it's read as Yarshion plural, therefore by definition, Rebbe darshans it in a plural sense to teach you 2 judges. So that's Rebbe. Rabbi Yehuda ben Roatz, listen to this. The sign you learned in a brayso, Shalom Talmidim, it's Rabbi Yehuda ben Roatz. So ultimately, again, the students ask Rabbi Yehuda ben Roatz, Ekra ani, shivim, yachol tehe yoledes nekeva, Tameya Shivim. So we'll say, listen to this. The Torah in the beginning of Parshas Tazria speaks about the laws of Tumas Leda. So the Torah says, for example, that taloch is when a woman gives birth to a boy, so she is Tameya for 1 week, 7 days, and then she has 33 days of Yemei Tohar, which means that even if she's bleeding, that bleeding does not render her a Tameya. I will say, we don't, we don't observe these halachas in this way today. That's because our halachos of Hilchos Nida have fundamentally changed. Our halachos of Hilchos Nida not have changed, but they merged with the halachos of Zava Gidola. We'll see it in Meseches Nida. We'll get into all of this. In any event, when biblically a woman gives birth to a boy, she's tameh for 7 days, and then Torah, even if she's waiting for 33 days. Now, Torah says the following, that if she gives birth to a girl, then Nikeva Teled, Vitama Shivu'ayim. The Bible says Shvu'ayim means how long? 2 weeks. Everything for a girl is doubled. So 2 weeks, she's Tameya. 66 days, she's Tahora. The Bible says, here's the problem. The problem is that the word Shvu'ayim is written without a Vav. Meaning, if you or I were writing Shvu'ayim, we would write it Shin Vez Vav Ayin Yud Mem. It's written, if you notice, it's written exactly how Shvu'ayim. So they asked Rabbi Yehuda ben Roatz, maybe it's not Shvu'ayim. Maybe it's what? Maybe it's Shivim. Maybe it's 70 days. Because that's what that's when you look at it, maybe Torah's telling me that a woman is Tameya for 70 days after she gives birth to a girl. Yachol te'yoledes lekiva Tameya Shivim. Amar lahem, Rabbi Yehuda ben Roatz says no. Rabbi Yehuda says, Tima v'tir b'zachar, v'time v'tir b'nekeva. The Torah says that there are days of Tumah and Tara when a woman gives birth to a boy, and days of Tumah and Tara when a woman gives birth to a girl. Ma kishetihir b'zachar, Benekeva kiflayim. So we'll say so just like when it comes to Tara, so the Tara period of a boy and the birth of a boy is doubled for a girl. So if a woman is Tahora for 33 days by a boy, she is Tahora for 66 days by a girl. Af kishetime. So we'll say, so we see that the relationship between a boy and a girl, right, relationship between the birth of a boy and birth of a girl is doubled. That's the realm of Tara. We would assume that whatever is going to apply to Tara is going to apply to Tumah as well. Af kishetime bizachar benekeva kiflayim. Ultimately, again, and so too, whatever the Tumah period for a boy is after the birth of a boy, which in this case is 1 week, will be doubled by a girl. Therefore, again, even though the word looks like shivim, we know it can't mean shivim. What does it have to be? It has to be shivu'ayim. La'achar sheyatzu machzir achareim. So we'll say, after Rabbi Yehuda ben Roatz went ahead and gave this whole drasha to the Talmidim, he ran after them. Amar lahem, iatem zikukim l'chach. So he said to them, but the truth is, you actually don't need this entire drasha. Why? Because shivu'ayim karinan v'yesh aim lemikra. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Roatz says, at the end of the day, you don't need this whole drasha. Why? Because the word is read as shivu'ayim, even though what? It looks like, right? When you read it, it looks like shivim, but because it is read as shivu'ayim, that's our Masorah, yesh aim lemikra. Also, we give supremacy ultimately to the way the word is spoken and not the way the word is written. So over here you see Rabbi Yehuda ben Roatz subscribes to this idea of yesh aim lemikra. Next, Beis Shammai Omrim, and this is very exciting because this is like a whole variety of just totally unrelated cases. So Beis Shammai, but again, all coming back to the same principle of yesh aim lamikra. There is supremacy ultimately again to the spoken word. Beis Shammai, what does Beis Shammai say? Disnan, Beis Shammai Omrim, kol hanisnin al mizbeach achitzon shenastum l'matana achas kiper. So we'll say, so over here, the Gemara says the following: that halacha lemaisa, if you go certain karbanos require a sprinkling of blood on the mizbeach. So we'll say many karbanos have multiple matnas damim, multiple sprinklings of blood. So Beis Shammai says, even if you have a karban that requires a number of sprinklings of blood, so he says, however, b'matana achas kiper, as long as you did at least one sprinkling of blood for a particular karban on the mizbeach, so ultimately again, mission accomplished, and kapara has been achieved. Shne'emar, v'dam zivachecha yishafech. So the Gemara says, "Ubechatos shtei matanos." But a chatos requires ultimately again 2 acts of sprinkling. So the Gemara says, Beis Hillel says, "Af bechatos shenasan b'matana achas kiper." Beis Hillel says, even by a chatos, if you just go ahead and do 1 sprinkling, that has atoned as well. So we'll say, so fundamental machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says that in all cases, even if a carbon requires multiple sprinklings, as long as you did at least 1, the carbon is effective. Beis Hillel says that's true for everything but a chatos. A chatos ultimately again, I'm sorry, I just said it wrong. But by a chatas you require 2. Beis Hillel says even by a chatas you only require 1. So good. My time to Beis Shammai. So we'll say, what's Beis Shammai's logic? Meaning, why does Beis Shammai say that even if a carbon technically requires multiple sprinklings of blood, that as long as you did one, the carbon is effective? So the Gemara says, so Kronos, Hare Kan Sheish. So we'll say, listen to this. Or I should say Karnos, really. So the pasuk says Karnos 3 times. The pasuk Karnos means the corners. Now, interestingly enough, so Beis Shammai says that it says Karnos 3 times. Now, I'll point out to you over here something fascinating. If you have, the Torah or on the side of the Gemara, which lists the Pesukim, so you can actually see all of this in print. But the way it works is, the first Karnos is written Chaser, without a Vav. The second Karnos is written chaser without a vav, and the third karnos is written chaser without a vav. All of them are written chaser. They're written deficient. They're not written with that vav which would normally be used for a plural word. So Beis Shammai says that even though it's written vav, it's pronounced karnos, which is plural. So we'll say when you have 3 mentions of the word karnos, that gives you sheish, right? That ultimately, again, gives you 6 different applications, right? So it tells you 6 times you have to sprinkle on the corners of the Mizbeach. So why 6 times? Arba l'mitzvah. To teach you that what? 4 times of say are mitzvah, in other words, which means that 4 times are the v'lachatchila, u'shtayim la'akev. But ultimately, again, 2 of them are absolute necessities. So 2 of the sprinklings must be done. 4 of the sprinklings are mitzvah, but are not ma'akev, do not hold up the kapara. The boss say, pause over here for just a moment. What did we just see? We just saw that according to Beis Shammai, yesh aim lamikra. Right? Beis Shammai says that supremacy is given to the way the word is spoken, even if it's different than the way the word is written. In this context, the word is written deficiently without a vav, yet Beis Shammai still darshans it in a plural sense. Why? Because it's spoken out in a plural with a vav. Beis Hillel say, karnos, hare kanarba. So Beis Hillel say, listen, the first karnos is written mole, but the second 2 ones are written chaser, hare kan arba. So that gives you 4, right? That gives you 4. I will say, so meaning the one with the vav is worth 2, and each of the deficient ones are worth 1. So ultimately, again, that gives you 4. Gimel l'mitzvah, v'achas la'akev. 1 ultimately, again, is to teach you that there's a mitzvah, there's an obligation, and 3 are a mitzvah, and 1 is ma'akev. Ve'ema kulu l'mitzvah. I don't understand. Why can't you darshan then that all of the sprinklings are the mitzvah? We'll say the mitzvah means it's something nice to do, but it's not necessarily obligatory, meaning it's not necessary for the kapara, to which the Gemara says, kapara b'chti lo ashkichan. We'll say you can't find the kapara for a carbon with absolutely no sprinkling, meaning maknas domim, sprinkling of the blood of the mizbech, is an indispensable part of the avoda, but it appears that whether you need a basic 1 or a basic 2, that's the machlokes. But I will say, for our purposes, without getting into the weeds of karbanos, but for our purposes, we just saw that Beis Shammai darshan karnos, 3 words as being written as mole, as being written in the plural form, even though they're not written in the plural form because they're spoken in the plural form, he darshans them as plural words. Next, Rabbi Shimon, says, this is great. Rabbi Shimon, Desanya, Shtaim Kil Chasan, Ushlishis Afilu Tefach. Rabbi say, Sukkah. So, do you realize how exciting this is? We've gone from Tumas Leda to Karbanos to Sukkah. All mamish in like 9 minutes. Incredible. Rabbi Shimon, resolution is Desanya, Shtaim Kil Chasan, Ushlishis Afilu Tefach. So, listen to this. We know that there's halacha l'Moshe Sinai when it comes to Sukkah the following. That the last wall of the Sukkah, does not have to be a full wall. Rather, again, all you need is a tefach of a wall, and that constitutes a wall agabe the sukkah. So we'll say the machlokis we're going to see is what are the basic dimensions of a sukkah. So shtaim kil chasan, if you have 2 regular walls, ushlishas afilu tefach, and the 3rd wall is only a tefach. So the halacha is that sukkah is kosher. We'll say that's the Tanakama. Rabbi Shimon says shlosha kil chasan. Shalosh kil chasan. You need 3 regular walls, or revias afilu tefach, and the 4th wall could even be a tefach. So we'll say fundamental machlokes in Rabbi Shimon and the Rabbanon. Rabbanon say a minimum sukkah is 2 walls and a 3rd wall that's a tefach. Rabbi Shimon says it's 3 walls and a 4th wall that's a tefach. But my commitment for the Gi, what are they arguing about? Rabbanon savri yesh aim lamasores. The Rabbanan say that when darshaning, we have to look at how the word is written. For Rabbi Shimon savar yesh em lemikra, and Rabbi Shimon says no. We look at how the word is spoken. Watch this, Rabbi say. Rabbanan savar yesh em lemasoras. So the Rabbanan hold that supremacy is given to the way the word is written. So I'll say, when the Torah speaks about sukkos, it says, basukos, basukos, basukos. So remember again, in the first two forms of the word sukkah, it's written chaser, without the vavs. The last sukkah is written malay, hare kan arba. So we'll say, essentially, that gives you 4 sukkos, right? 4 sukkos. Because sukkah number 1, that is deficient, that meaning not deficient, meaning written out the vav is worth 1, so to speak. Sukkah number 2 is worth 1. Sukkos number 3, which is written malay, is worth 2. Hare kan arba. Dal chad kra legufe. So take away 1 pasuk, Rabbi say, take away 1 sukkos. Ultimately, again, that's necessary to teach us just the concept of sukkah. Then pashuluhu tlas. That leaves me with 3. Asai hilchasa gar asa lishlishis vokim ta'atefach. So we'll say I'm left with 3 sukkos, and the halacha Moshe Messina tells you I need 3 walls, but that third wall need not be a complete wall, rather only needs to be a tefach. We'll say first wide line down on for Rabbi Shimon says, basukos, 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 hare kan sheish. Rabbi Shimon says, I don't care. We don't look at how it's written, but rather what? We look at how it's pronounced. And it's pronounced as basukos, basukos, basukos. Each of them are plural. Hare kan sheish. Both say, remember that one's, each one is quote unquote worth 2. Therefore that gives me 6 sukkos. Dal chad kra legufe. So take away 1 of the sukkos to teach you the concept of sukkah itself. Pashu luhu arba. We'll say that leaves me with 4 sukkos. Asay hilchasa gar asa l'revius vok me'atefach. Teaches you that the sukkah must be 4 walls. And Allah Moshe Messina comes along and teaches me that what? That the 4th wall only needs to be a tefach. But I will say, for our purposes over here, you see that Rabbi Shimon holds that yesh aim lemikra. That we ascribe supremacy ultimately to how the word is spoken. Rabbi Akiva, what's Rabbi Akiva's case? Tisanya. Rabbi Akiva Omer, minayim l'revius dam sheyatza mishnei mesim shemetame ba'ohel. So it's another interesting case. Rabbi Akiva says, how do you know that blood, well, so the halacha is that a revius of blood is metame ba'ohel, which means that if you're under the same roof as a revius of blood, that you could become tame from tumas meis from that. Rabbi Akiva says that even if you have a revius of dam, a revius of blood that comes from 2 different corpses, so 2 bodies both go ahead and combine to form a shear of a revius of blood. So the Gemara says, Shemetayim ba'ohel, that has the ability to convey tumas ohel. How do I know that? Shnei emar, al kol nafshos meis lo yavo. Ultimately says the Gemara, al kol nafshos meis, plural. On all, literally, you shall not come in contact with all nafshos meis, dead people. Shtei nefashos v'shir echad. So Rabbi Akiva learns that from over here, nafshos meis, to teach me that even if the requisite amount of blood, i.e. the revius, comes from 2 different sources, it's mitame tumasoah. V'Rabbanan, says Rabbi Akiva darshans. The Rabbanan don't darshans because they say nafshos ksiv. Rabbanan say even though the word is read nafshos, it's written nafshos without the vav, so it's not written. It's written in the singular form, and therefore again you can't learn this halacha. So we'll say again, what do you see from here? That Rabbi Akiva holds yesh aim lamikra. Supremacy is given to the spoken word. So maskif la. So we'll say, so this is really like exceptionally exciting Gemara, because here the Gemara is saying, lined up all of these different opinions, all who subscribe to the same approach of Yesh Ein Lamikra. So it says the Gemara, Maskif Acha Bar Yaakov, Mi'ika Delesli Yesh Ein Lamikra. I don't understand. You're making it sound like that there are those who argue with this premise of Yesh Ein Lamikra. Is there anyone who doesn't hold Yesh Ein Lamikra? Meaning we all agree that supremacy is given to the spoken word and not to the way that it's written. Vatanya, I'll tell you why. Because if you don't subscribe to Yesh Ein Lamikra, you have a problem. Pasuk is Vatanya, B'chalevimo. Pasuk says, Lo Siv Hashel Gedi B'chalevimo. You can't cook a kid in its mother's work. Basar B'chalav. Yochel B'chalef. I might have thought, maybe it's not chalav. Right? Maybe it's not chalav. Maybe I will say, what is it? Maybe it's chalef. Maybe it's fat. Maybe what it's saying is, Lo Siv Hashel Gedi B'chalevimo. There's no din of Basar B'chalav. There's a din of Basar B'chalev. So the Gemara says, Amrit Yesh Ein Lamikra. So I'll say, but rather you see from here that's what? Look at the Rashi. Amrit yesh ein lemikra, top of Daled Amud Beis. V'lekaman dipolig. Dipolig bas b'chal ben adas. Also, listen to this. It's amazing. So the Gemara says, who is this that's saying this over here? This is Rav Acha Bar Yaakov. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov says, everyone has to agree with yesh ein lemikra. Why, Rabosai? Because if you don't hold yesh ein lemikra, then you know what? You don't know, I'm sorry? Cheeseburgers, right? If you don't hold yesh ein lemikra, then at the end of the day, it's almost impossible to learn out the isser of basa b'chalav. Because Rabosai, again, if it's yesh ein lemasoras, which means supremacy is given to the way that it's written, I don't know if that's chalav or chalev. If that's what you, but again, because we all agree yesh ein lemikra, and our masora is that we know that we read it as chalav, that's the isser of basa b'chalav. So Rav Acha Bar Yaakov is saying everyone agrees with yesh ein lemikra. Ela dekuli alma yesh ein lemikra. Oh, so I was like, okay, you're right. So after we spent this whole Amud Aleph showing these machloksim, the Gemara says, you're right. There's no machloksim. Well, so just you should know, it's an incredible musar. How, sometimes we invest a lot of time and energy into creating a certain construct or framework for ourselves. And sometimes it's clear that it's wrong. It becomes clear to us that it's wrong. And the hardest thing in life is to backpedal. The hardest thing in life is when you go out and you invested so much time in a personality, in an identity, in a mahalach, and whatever, and then you realize, wow, this is just incorrect. So I think most times people just dig in their heels and would rather go ahead and just continue down in the wrong path than to revisit it. But you see, Chazal give us this incredible musar. We just spent Amud Aleph all of this time solidifying this idea that there's a machlokes. Now the Gemara says, okay, we were wrong. We were wrong. We said an incredible yisur in life about it's okay to say that you're wrong. It's okay. It's okay. We make mistakes, and the best thing you can do when you make a mistake is I acknowledge it, try to go ahead and redirect myself and move forward. You're right. Everyone holds yesh ein lemikra, although we're going to challenge this again in just a moment. Everyone agrees to say that supremacy is given to the way the word is spoken. So it says, here's the problem. If everyone agrees that yesh ein lemikra, now you know what we're going to have to do. We have to start all over. Now we have to go back to all of these machloksim and then figure out what are they about. We thought they were arguing about yesh ein lemikra, yesh ein lemasoras. If you're telling me now that everybody agrees yesh ein lemikra, I need now to go back and figure out what are they arguing about over here. So let's do this. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Rabbanan. So what are Rabbi and the Rabbanan arguing about? Rabbi Rabbanan, Bahakam Iflagi, Rabbi Sabar, Yarshion Elohim, Achrini. Rabbi holds that the second time the Torah discusses Yarshion Elohim, that's talking about a different set of judges. So meaning the Torah told me Elohim the first time, which means two, and then Rebbe understands that the second mention of Yarshion Elohim is talking about another two judges. And therefore, you're going to both say that leads Rebbe to what? A Beis Din made up of four judges. You can't have a Beis Din shakel, you can't have an even numbered Beis Din, and therefore again you get to five. For Rabbanan Sabri, Yarshion Deheich Vahai. Whereas Rabbanan understand that the Yarshion Elohim in the second pasuk is referring to the same Elohim of the first pasuk. And just like in the first pasuk it was two, in the second pasuk it was two, you can't have a Beis Din of two, therefore it becomes three. So the machlokes is just on what the Elohim is actually going on, but nothing to do with Yesh ein lemikra, Yesh ein lemasoras. Next, Rabbi Yehuda ben Roatz. So remember again, what did Rabbi Yehuda ben Roatz say? Rabbi Yehuda ben Roatz lo pligi rabbanan alei. So the Gemara says in the case Rabbi Yehuda was the Leda, was the Tumas Leda case. So in his case the Gemara says that really the Rabbanan are lo pligi rabbanan alei. We're going to come back and define that more. Beis Hillel. What about Beis Hillel? So let's remember again, Beis Hillel was the machlokes of the minimum number of sprinklings. Beis Shammai says that you need a minimum of one, but for a chatos two. Beis Hillel says even for a chatos you only need one. So the Gemara says, Beis Hillel desanya v'chiper. The Torah says you shalaton three times. Mipnei hadin v'halo dinhu. Ne'emar damim lamata. So listen to this. So if you look at Rashi says mipnei hadin. It's the fourth short line in Rashi. Hutzruchu lichtav kulan. Why did the Torah have to write v'chiper? So the Gemara says mipnei hadin. You have to write all of them. The ilah havaksivi havu maisana medina dekula maknos ma'akvi. So we're going to see now that the Torah had to write v'chiper. Because had it not written that, I would have learned this from a Kavachomer. What's the Kavachomer? V'alo dinhu ne'emar damim lamata. It says damim lemata. It says damim by ultimately the sprinkling on the mizbeach. V'ne'emar damim lamalo, ma damim ha'amurim lamata, shenasan b'matana achas kiper. So just like it says also by the second mentioning of the damim, it means that if you went ahead and you did one application, it's mechaper. Af damim ha'amur lamala shenasa b'matana achas kiper. So too again by the damim that I mentioned lamala, I'm going to tell you what these are in just a moment. So ultimately, one application should be enough to affect kapara as well. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Ne'emru damim beparsha lemata gabe chata sa'of. So we'll say the lemata is by chatas of the bird offering, that is the chatas. Dishmias hakol d'chsiv ve'iza midam achatas al kira mizbeach. V'nemru damim lamala b'chatas behema. So the Gemara over here is equating the chatas off with the chatas behema. So just like the chatas madam amur lamata, just like by the chatas ha'of, there is one application, and that's enough. So too by the chatas behema, all you need is one application as well. So we're going to learn out the blood applications of the chatas behema from the blood applications of the chatas ha'of. Or perhaps one could have made a different argument. Ne'emar damim b'chutz v'ne'emar damim bifnim. It says blood application on the outside mizbeach. But so the outside mizbeach is what we call the mizbeach hachitzon, which was the large mizbeach used for animal sacrifice. V'ne'emar damim bifnim. But there were certain blood applications, specifically on Yom Kippur, that were done on the inner mizbeach. Now remember, the inner mizbeach is mizbeach hakitoras, the incense mizbeach. You're not offering up animals there, but on Yom Kippur there are blood applications there. So I would say the following: Madam hamurim bifnim chisra achas mimatanos mimatnos lo asav lo klum. So just like if you missed something, in other words, if you did not do one of the applications on the inner mizbeach, so ultimately again you have compromised the sacrificial service. So too avdamim ha'amurim b'chutz. So too I would say that what if you missed a blood application on the outer mizbeach, so lo asav lo klum. Ultimately, again, if you missed one, you did absolutely nothing. Take a look at the Rashi we just a moment. Bifnim, it's like in the middle of the short lines. Bifnim, chatos hapnimios deparkoin mashiach v'ha'elam davar hatuunin sheva zayos ala parochas v'ala mizbeach hazav. Okay, so actually Rashi's not bringing down the example of Yom Kippur. He's bringing down the example of parkoin mashiach or par ha'elam davar minatzib, or certain sin offerings. Utenan bu matana achas mi'akeves ve'ezim okamon. So I say, listen to this. So the Gemara is dashing the following idea. The question is, what do you compare to what? So if you compare the chatas hapnim to the chatas achutz, right? If you go ahead, or I should say differently, if you compare the chatas behema to the chatas ha'of, the same way that the chatas ha'of has one blood application, so chatas behema only needs one blood application as well. There'll be more blood applications, but all you need is one. On the other hand, if you compare outside karbanos to the mizbeach hachitzon, to the karbanos of the mizbeach hapanimi, just like the mizbeach hapanimi, if you miss one blood application, the carbon is ineffective. So to on the outside, if you miss one blood application, the carbon is ineffective. So depending on what you compare to, will determine the outcome. To which the Gemara says, near lemidome. So we'll say in general, we like to compare similar things. Therefore, done in chutz michutz, so therefore we would rather compare karbanos that are offered on the outside, the external mizbeach, the mizbeach hachitzon, to one another, rather than compare karbanos that are offered on the outside mizbeach to karbanos offered on the inside mizbeach. Therefore I would sooner say, let's compare chatas behema to chatas ha'of. The same way chatas ha'of has one blood application and is kosher, so too again, chatas behema only requires one blood application to be kosher. Okay, lecha lederachzu, or perhaps you go in a different direction. Done in chatos v'dalit karnos mechatos v'arba karnos. Or perhaps you want to compare one case of chatas that is sprinkled on the four corners to another case of chatas that is sprinkled on the four corners. Va'al yochiach zeh she'ein chatas v'dalit karnos. And don't try to compare it to a case that is not a chatas and therefore does not have a requirement of four corners. Therefore, we'll say, what's the upshot of all of this? Talmud lomar v'chiper mipnei hadin. Therefore, the Torah has, because how do we just left this to just deriving conclusions through comparisons? We could see how we could emerge with an erroneous conclusion. Therefore, the Torah says the singular word, v'chiper, 3 times. And what do I learn from that? Kiper, afa pishlan asan ala shlosha. It teaches me We'll say keeper 3 times is 3. It teaches me that even if I only have 3 blood applications, even if it required more, I can still affect kapara. Keeper teaches me a second kapara. That even if I only have 2 blood applications, it's kosher. And keeper, I will say ultimately, and it teaches me the last keeper to teach you that's what? That even if I just had 1. So keeper. If you could have 3, great. If you have 2, you're okay also. But at the end of the day, if you just have 1, it's still kosher. So we'll say it turns out that the machlokes ultimately is just how to darshan, but has nothing to do with yesh im mikra, yesh im masor. It's very exciting. Weiter. Says the Gemara, Reb Shin Rabbanan, sukkah. Sukkah, what do we do with sukkah? Remember again, we said before this machlokes Reb Shin Rabbanan. Namely, about what the dimensions are of a sukkah. The Rabbanan say that a sukkah is 2 walls and a third wall that's a tefach. Rabbi Shimon says it's 3 walls and a 4th wall that is a tefach. The way we set up the machlokes is how we set it up as saying that lamaisa again. It's how they darshan the word sukkos, right? Even though sukkos is not so. Rabbi Shimon darshans it as sukkos malay. Because it's spoken plural, and therefore that gives us 6. Take 1 away. Good. We know the drasha. We painted it as a machlokis of yesh im lemikra, yesh im lemasoras. Now the Gemara is telling me everyone agrees yesh im lemikra. Supremacy is given to the spoken word. So what's the nature of the machlokis? So it says the Gemara. Excuse me. Listen to this. I'm sorry. So Rabbi Shimon Savar, Sichacha lo baikra, for Rabbanan Sarvi Sichacha baikra. We'll say, watch this. The shaila is, do you need one of the word sukkos, one of the sukkos, to teach me the din of schach or not? Do you need me to teach you the din of schach or not? So we'll say, if you look at Rashi for just a moment, Rashi says, Rabbi Shimon Rabbanan, Kulhu yesh im lamikra. Everyone agrees that supremacy is given to the spoken word. So the Gemara says, Dechimi the less chad besukos legufei, pashulu arba. So according to Rabbi Shimon will say that you take out, right, everybody agrees yesh im lamikra, so you're going to take away out 1 sukkos, that leaves you with 4. Therefore Rabbi Shimon says, going to take out 1 because one of them teaches me the actual din of sukkah itself. Teaches me 4, so I need 4 walls of a sukkah. Halach l'Moshe Misinai teaches me that what? The 4th wall only needs to be a tefach. Havar Rabbanan Savri Sichacha Baikra. So Rabbanan hold that you need one of the sukkos to teach you the concept of schach. In other words, so therefore, even if I start out with 6 Pashaluhu Gimel Defanos, so therefore it turns out that I take away one of the sukkos teaching the concept of sukkah, one of the sukkos ultimately again to teach me the concept of schach, that leaves me with 3. And now that I'm left with 3, the Halach Moshe Misinai comes along and teaches me that I only need 2 full walls plus a tefach of a third. So the way the Gemara is framing this now is whether or not you need to take away one of those sukkos to teach you the concept of schach, that you need schach. The Rabbanan say yes. Rabbi Shimon says no. Say, why does Rabbi Shimon say no? Why does Rabbi Shimon say no? Because again, Rabbi Shimon says, sukkah nikres shma al shem haschach. In other words, what makes a sukkah, we'll say, is what? Is the schach. That's the defining the defining feature of a sukkah is the fact that it has a temporary roof. That's what makes it a temporary structure. We know we pass halacha l'maisa, the walls of a sukkah can be of the most solid materials. It doesn't matter what you make the walls out of. I mean, it matters, but the walls don't have to necessarily be of an impermanent nature. They can even be of, so that what makes a sukkah, so B'Shimon says, I don't need a pasuk to teach me that schach. Schach is the ikr part of the sukkah. Rabbanan say, no, you need a pasuk for schach, or a word for schach also. That machlokis translates ultimately into how many sukkos you have available for drasha purposes. Next, Rabbi Kiva Rabbanan. So remember, next machlok is Rabbi Kiva and Rabbanan. So we'll say, what happens if you have a revius of blood which came from 2 corpses? 2 corpses. Rabbi Akiva says, if it comes together, it's an revius, then what? It's metame ba'ohel. The Rabbanan say it's not. So what are they arguing about? So Rabbi Akiva savar, nafshos, tarti mashma. Rabbi Akiva says that nafshos means even from 2 people. For Rabbanan Sabri, nafshos da'alma mashma. And the Rabbanan say, no, nafshos is just the way the Torah speaks. It just means people in general. Fine. So the Gemara says, well, so now watch this. So now so just understand what we started with over here. We started this morning, it feels like, it's only been 40 minutes, right, since we started the dot, but it feels like we've been on such a roller coaster. So remember, we started again with a statement that there's a machlokes. Yesh im mikra, yesh im masoras. Okay, that was the machlokes, and we defined all of these cases along those machlokes lines. Then the Gemara says, no machlokes. Everyone agrees, yesh aim lemikra. Supremacy is given to the way that the word is spoken. Fine. Now, what do we have to do as a result of that? We have to redefine all of these machlokes. Now the Gemara comes along and says, "Utakuli alma yesh aim lemikra." Is that really true? That everybody holds yesh aim lemikra, right? Is that really true that everybody holds that? But 1 second, Vatanya. Litotafos. Right? Well, so by tefillin, Torah uses this strange word of totafos. It says it 3 times. Now, if you notice again, so 2 times it's written chaser without the vav. 1 time it's written chaser. Harei kan arba divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel teaches us that that tefillin have to have 4 compartments. Where does he get 4 compartments? I will say because totafos is 1. Totafos number 2 is 2, and Totafos number 3, which is written chaser, which is written male with the vavs, represents what? 2. So 1 plus 1 plus 2 is 4. Rabbi Shmuel Darshan, from here you see that you need either 4 compartments or 4 parshos, something with 4 with tefillin. Rabbi Kiva Omer Einot Tzarech. Rabbi Kiva said, and I will say now, understand what is Rabbi Shmuel doing? That is yesh aim lamasores. What that is saying is supremacy is given to the way the word is written, not the way the word is spoken. What are you talking about? You just told me over here that everyone agrees yesh aim lamikra, and here we've got the great sage Rabbi Shmuel telling me that no, yesh aim lamasores. Rabbi Kiva says Einot Tzarech. Rabbi Kiva says, Rabbi Shmuel, you don't need this whole drasha. Rather, elatat bekas vishtayim pas ba'afriki shtayim. Ultimately, Rabbi Kiva says you don't need the whole drasha. The word totafos is not etymologically a Hebrew word. It's not Lashon HaKodesh. There's no Hebraic etymological root for the word totafos. Rather, Rashi HaKodesh says it's actually from 2 different dialects. Right? It's tat bekafsi in some Kaspi languages too. Pas in some African dialect is too. Rabbi Yitzchak Berditcher brings down, he says, what's the pshat? Why did Rebbe Shalom give us the word totafos? I'll say tomorrow. So let's finish. El Olam Pligi. The Gemara says, you're right, it's a machlokes. Wow. I feel like exhausted. Mamish exhausted. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. So the Gemara says, it's a machlokes. Not every machlokes of yesh aim lemikra, yesh aim lemasoros. V'hani miliki pligi. But watch this. When do they have a machlokes? Heicha deshanikra mimasoros. We'll say now, we'll end off with this piece today. We'll pick up with it tomorrow. But when do we say there's a machlokes? There's only machlokes when the written word really is different than the spoken word. That's when there's a machlokes between so the example of that would be, let's say, shivim shvuayim. When the written word and the spoken word are 2 different words. Actually, leave that on the side. About hai, chalav v'ches. So remember again, the reason why the Gemara had to say that everyone agrees with yesh aim lemikra was why? Basar b'chalav. Because if you don't hold yesh aim lemikra, then the pasuk will be teaching me what? Lo savashel gedi b'chelev imo. Maybe it's about fat. Maybe it's not talking about milk. So that's how the Gemara backed into saying everyone has to agree with yesh aim lemikra. Now that the Gemara is saying that it's actually a machlokes, the shaila is how you go ahead and you darshan bas b'chalav. So we'll stop over here. We'll pick up a mitzvah with bas b'chalav. So just understand where we're holding. Where we're leaving off is we're back to square where we started with today, assuming that indeed there is a machlokes between those who hold yesh ein lemikra, yesh ein lemasores. But if you're going to say there's a machlokes, it requires of us to understand how you know that lo savashel gadi b'chaliv imo is chalav and ultimately not chelev. And Me'arat Hashem to be continued tomorrow.
Only when there's an additional letter.